Hi, では皆さん. Today I'd like to begin introducing our new grammar material from Chapter 9. Our first and biggest grammar point in Chapter 9, we're going to be revisiting the short form. So in the last chapter, we talked about the short form in terms of the present tenses. Just like in the long form, we have a present tense affirmative and negative, so mas and masen. In the short form, we also have a present tense, affirmative and negative, the dictionary form and the nai form, right? So the same is going to be true for the past tense. In the long form, we have our past tense forms and our negative past tense forms. And in our short form, we also have a past tense and a negative past tense. So I'm going to introduce a little bit about those today. So once again, long form, we have mas and masen are the negatives. For the past, we have mashita and masen deshita, right? For the short form, we have the dictionary form in present tense and the nai form when it's negative. In the past tense, we have what's called the ta form and the nakata form. So today I'm going to start out by talking about this ta form and nakata form. First of all, though, let's look back to the te form, which we covered in the previous semester and which we reviewed a little bit at the beginning of Chapter 7. So for the te form, starting with the dictionary form, we want to take the parts that end in u, tsu, or du on u verbs and replace them with a small tsu plus te. The parts that end with mu, bu, and nu, we change to nde. The ones that change with su, we change to shite, with ku to ite, and gu to ide, with the exception of iku, which is ite. So this is all review for us, right? So when we want to make the ta form, it's actually very simple. For our first step, te formを作ります. We want to make the te form. Our second step, we change te to ta and de to da. That's all there is to it. So the ta form is just the te form, but instead of saying te, we say ta. Instead of saying de, we say da. So let's take a look. This means that with u verbs, so for example, kau will change to, in the te form, katte. So in the ta form, it becomes katta. Nomu in the te form changes to nonde. So in the ta form, it becomes nonda. As for the ru verbs, they're even easier. All we have to do is get rid of the ru and put te to make them into te form, right? So taberu, the te form is just tabete. And deru, the te form is just dete. So when we change that into ta form, we get tabete, tabeta, dete, deta. Very straightforward. Our irregular verbs, once again, are ones that we have to just memorize. But the good news is we already memorized the te form. So when we change it to ta form, all we have to do is change the te to ta. So suru, the te form is shite. So the ta form must be shita. For kuru, the te form is kite. So the ta form must be kita. So once again, all we're doing is changing this te to a ta. Katte, katta. Nonde, nonda. Tabete, tabeta. Dete, deta. Shite, shita, kite, kita. All you need to really know in order to get a grasp on the ta form is to know your te form. So if you still struggle with the te form, it might be a good idea to go back to chapter 6 and do a little review. So let's sum up. How do we make the ta form for the following verbs? So suru is going to change to shita, kuru to kita. A do verb, we're going to replace the do at the end with ta. For u verbs that end with ku, we want to replace it with ita. Except for iku. This is a little bit of a weird word. We change it, the whole thing, to ita. How about gu? Ones that end with gu, we want to replace with ida. Ones that end in u, tsu, and du, we want to replace with small tsu plus ta. Ones that end in mu, bu, nu, we want to replace with nda. Ones that end in su, we want to replace with shita. Now that we know how to do this, we can put any verb into ta form. So that is the short past in the affirmative, the ta form. Now we're going to talk about the short past in the negative, the nakata form. Nakata. So in order to make the short past negative, we have to start out again by making another form. Step 1, we're going to make the nai form. Nai formu o tsukurimasu. So we're going to start with nai form, which we learned in the last chapter. But step 2, instead of saying nai, we will say nakata. So instead of nai, nakata. So suru, the nai form is shinai. Instead of shinai, we'll say shinakata. Kuru, the nai form is konai. So instead of saying konai, we say konakata. Taberu, tabenai. Tabenakata. Nomu. Once again, we want to make the ah sound with these u verbs. So nomu to nomanai. Nomanakata. Aru. Aru is a little bit special, right? Aru gets changed to just nai. And so then the nakata form is just nakata. So shinakata, konakata, tabenakata, nomanakata, nakata. These are the nakata forms of these verbs. So let's review really quick the short past negative version. For u verbs like iku, we want to change the u sound to an a, and then add, instead of nai, we're going to add nakata. So iku, ikanai, ikanakata. Our only exception is our special one, aru, nai, nakata. How about our do verbs? So taberu, the nai form, we're just going to drop the do and add nai. So the nai form, tabenai, tabenakata. And then our irregulars, suru will change to shinai, shinakata. Kuru will change to konai, konakata. So this is how nakata form works for verbs. Okay, I have just a little bit more to introduce about the short forms. We also can put short forms of adjectives and nouns in the past tense affirmative. This is going to be pretty easy as long as you remember your adjective and noun conjugations. So, to put them into the affirmative past, for e-adjectives, all we have to do is conjugate them into the form that they go into and drop des. So we have our katta des ending that makes it past tense. We just get rid of the des. For not adjectives, we are going to change the deshita to datta. So instead of deshita, we will have datta. And for nouns, we are also going to change the deshita to datta. So nouns and not adjectives work the same way. So e-adjectives, we have it already conjugated to katta des, and then we just drop the des. For not adjectives and nouns, we change deshita to datta. So once again, this is really straightforward as long as you are familiar with your adjective conjugations. So if you still feel a little shaky, if you heard me talk about changing the e-adjectives to katta and that sounded totally unfamiliar, you might want to go back to chapter 5 and review how the adjective conjugations work. So let's practice a little. We have ookikatta desu. How can we make it short form? That's right, just ookikatta. How about yokatta desu? How do we make that short form? Just yokatta. How about a not adjective like genki deshita? Genki datta. How about a noun like gakusei deshita? Gakusei datta. So this is how we make them affirmative. Now let's talk about the negatives. These are even easier, as long as you are familiar with how your adjective conjugation works. So all we have to do to make them negative is get rid of the des at the end. So once we have them in the form that we want, we just drop des. So, ookiku nakatta desu. The short form will just be ookiku nakatta. Genki janakatta desu. The short form will just be genki janakatta. Gakusei janakatta desu. The short form will just be gakusei janakatta. So this is once again very straightforward, very easy, but you may want to review those adjective conjugations so that you know how to get to this long form version in the first place. So e-adjectives, we're dropping that e and adding kunakatta. For not adjectives, we're adding janakatta. For nouns, we're adding janakatta. So a little review might be helpful there. Okay, so now we've talked about how to make adjectives and nouns into the short form past tense. So take a moment to complete the exercises so you can practice how to turn them into these forms.